The very, very modest apartment with no hot water where Joseph Lieberman was raised has long since been demolished. But the values he learned in that little apartment in the flat above his grandparents' house are still there. They're the same values of devotion and public service that has driven him not only to overcome humble beginnings, but to serve the country for 24 years here in the United States Senate. 2 years ago, on the day he announced his retirement from the Senate, Joe Lieberman described his rise from cold water flat to Congress as follows, I quote, "My 4 grandparents came to America seeking freedom, and they found it. They came to America hoping for opportunities, and they got them. But even they could not have been, but even they could not have dreamed that their grandson would end up as a United States Senator," close quote. Joe was always a natural-born leader. He was president of his high school graduating class. He got undergraduate degrees and a law degree from Yale, one of the most prestigious universities in the world. And he was chairman of the Yale Daily News while he was there. And he was really a civil rights activist early on as a young man. He was inspired, as many of us were, by the words of John Kennedy. Joe defeated an incumbent to win a seat in the Connecticut State Senate, where he served for 10 years, including 6 as the majority leader of the Connecticut State Legislature. After returning to private practice for 2 years, he served as the first full-time Connecticut Attorney General. It was during his years as Attorney General that he met the love of his life, Hadassah. Today they have 4 children, 12 grandchildren. Then in 1988, again, he took on one of the giants of politics in the state of Connecticut, a race that no one thought he could win, but he did. He defeated an incumbent United States Senator. And for the last 24 years, he served the people of Connecticut and this country with honor and distinction. I was also pleased to have had the opportunity to support Senator Lieberman's historic candidacy for vice president in 2000. Joe was the first Jewish major party candidate for vice president. Senator Lieberman is a devout, observant Jew. He's even written a book about the importance of keeping the Sabbath as a day of rest. I read the book. I was so impressed with that book. Our Sabbaths may be on different days, but the solemnity of the Sabbath is important to both of us. I was so impressed by that book that I bought 20 of them and sent them to my friends and my family, who I thought would gain a great deal by learning from this book that Joe wrote. Joe Lieberman says his faith is the basis for his strong desire to serve the state of Connecticut and our country. During his 4 terms representing Connecticut in the Senate, Joe Lieberman played a key role in drafting and passing many different pieces of legislation, but the 1990 Clean Air Act amendments, which have literally saved lives by eliminating harmful smog, acid rain, and other toxins in our air and water. He's been chairman of the very important Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee. He's a powerful voice on security issues, and he has been exemplary, working on a bipartisan basis with Senator Susan Collins, who's been the ranking member of that committee. He led the charge to create the 9/11 Commission, implement its recommendations, and he was a leading voice for creation of that Department of Homeland Security, which we now look to for keeping this country safe. As a member of the Senate Armed Services Committee, Senator Lieberman was a strong advocate for repeal of discriminatory don't ask, don't tell policy that unjustly forced gay and lesbian service members into the closet. And he fought to ensure our military is the best prepared and best equipped fighting force in the world. We have much in common, but we don't always agree on policy issues. But we do 90% of the time. But regardless of the few differences we have, I've never ever doubted Joe Lieberman's principles or his patriotism. And I respect his independent streak as it stems from strong convictions. Joe said it best himself, and I quote, "I've not always fit comfortably into conventional political boxes." Maybe you've noticed that. Democrat, Republican, liberal, conservative, because I've always thought my first responsibility is not to serve a political party, but to serve my constituents, my state, and my country. Whatever the partisan or policy differences that divide us, they are much less important than the shared values and dreams that unite us. Madam President, I've watched up close. He has been a wonderful member of the Democratic caucus. I so admire and respect him. I agree with Senator Lieberman's values, and he's been, as I repeat, an asset to the Democratic caucus and our country. I'm pleased to have shared the dream of serving in the Senate with such an extraordinary man, an exceptional senator. I congratulate Joe and Hadassah on their years of dedicated service because they have worked together. I wish them both happiness.